Okay.
I'd like to call to order the March 5th meeting of the Minnetonka Park Board. Leslie, will you call roll, please?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair Ingraham and Park Board members. One thing we'd like to do a little bit different this time is as I call the roll, since we have 3 new members here we want to welcome, plus current members, if you could just give a very brief introduction of yourself so that everyone else can learn more about you, and we'll go through the roll call that way. So we'll start with Christy.
Jennifer?
Jennifer, sorry. Well, I typically we would say the last name. Yes.
Jennifer Christie. I've been a resident of Minnetonka for over 20 years at 2 different locations, and I have a Park and Rec degree from the University of Minnesota, and also have over a decade at Three Rivers Park District, as well as the DNR, doing public water access, trails, and park acquisitions. So I'm excited to talk about something I love talking about with other people and getting input from citizens to make the best decisions.
Hanley.
Ann Hanley. I've been on the park board for 2 years. I have a great interest in birds and bicycling and native plants.
Lehrman.
Hi, my name is Brad Lehrman, and I've lived in the city for about 26 years. This is my first meeting, so I'm happy to be here. Thank you. And I'm a retired attorney, so I have a lot of experience in governance and business law, and I am an avid outdoorsman.
All right. Schultz.
Hi, I'm Caleb Schultz. I have lived in Minnetonka with my family since 2017. I've got 3 children, and we get out to the parks as much as we can and enjoy that. I am trained in medicine and public health, so I kind of think of the parks area as a way for us all to be out in the community and engage in healthful living.
Thank you. Samarsky.
Hi, I'm Katie Samarsky. I've lived in Minnetonka for 11 years with my family. I have 2 boys. My career's in marketing, and I think this is my 4th year on the park board.
Thank you. Vitali.
Hi, I'm Corey Vitale. I've been on the park board, same as Katie, about 4 years, we think. Moved here from Florida about 7 years ago, and just really enjoyed the different nature that they have here versus in Florida. So really just wanted to make sure that I could be a part of the community in some way.
And Chair Ingraham.
Yeah, Dave Ingraham. I've lived in Minnetonka for over 40 years, retired. My wife and I have raised 2 adult daughters here who went to local schools, and we spent a lot of time in the parks with our dogs. Next, we have the approval of the agenda. Anyone have any questions or comments about the agenda, or do I hear a motion for approval?
I move to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
Call.
Oh, yes, sorry.
That's okay.
Christy.
Here?
Abstain,
Abstain.
because you weren't at the meeting.
Oh,
So
okay.
we're voting, you're voting on the motion.
Well, it's a motion for the
Yeah.
agenda.
For the
She-
agenda.
Oh, the current agenda.
Yeah.
Oh, current agenda, I'm sorry, see, I'm still novice at
We're
this
both
too.
learning together. So Christy.
Just say
Yes.
approve.
Here, approve.
Yes.
Approve. Oh,
We're approving a motion, so it's either yes or no.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yay or nay.
Yay.
Hanley.
Approve.
Lehrman.
Approve.
Schultz.
Yay.
Samarsky.
Approve.
Vitale.
Approve.
And Chair Ingraham.
Approve. Now we'll go for approval of the minutes. If everyone's had a chance to look at those, are there any questions or comments or suggested changes? If not, we have a motion to approve.
I move to approve the minutes from the February 5 meeting.
I'll second.
All right. Christy. You were abstaining.
Abstaining, thank you. I
Typically, you
should
would
have a
abstain if
different
you were
last
not
name
here.
that's later in the alphabet.
Hanley.
Approve.
Lehrman.
Abstain.
Schultz.
Abstain.
Samersky.
Approve?
Vitale. Ingraham.
Approve.
Motion passes, which is a good thing.
And the next item is citizens wishing to discuss items not on the agenda, since there's no one in the room and no one on the phone.
on the
I think
phone.
we can move on to number 6, special matters. Do we have special matters?
We have no special matters tonight.
Okay. So now, moving right along, we'll go to item 7, business items, and the Natural Resources Annual Report and Outreach Plan.
Yes, so item 7A is the Natural Resources Division's annual report, and then as well as the 2025 Education Outreach and Engagement Plan. And this is something for those who are new. Typically, this time of year, we bring this to you to help you understand what we've been doing in the past and then looking forward. So I will turn it over to Christine Peterson. She is our Natural Resources Engagement Coordinator within the Natural Resources Division, which is in our Public Works Department. So I'll let her take the lead.
Thank you, Leslie. Good evening, Chair Ingraham and Park Board members. Very pleased to be here. I look forward to coming every late winter to present an update on natural resources outreach, education, and engagement efforts in the past year, and as Leslie mentioned, our plan for the coming year. And you have at hand and available online the Natural Resources 2024 Annual Report to give you some more depth to this. But I will walk through what we do. I should say it's lovely to see the 3 new members and all of your interests and expertise that you bring to this board, and we appreciate your service. I'm a 27-year resident of Minnetonka and almost 11 years here at the city, and I'm very proud of the work that we all do together. So, because we have new park board members, and in case any members of the public watch this who aren't familiar with our division, I thought I'd lay a little groundwork, give a little context. Outreach, education, and engagement is really the framework through which we help bring the public and other stakeholders into the professional work of the Natural Resources Division, the strategic component of that work. So it's really about creating interest and inspiration and action. So outreach is really awareness, the foundation of all of this, because many people might not be aware of all the variety of policies, programs, goals, and opportunities in the city through the Natural Resources Division and collaboratively with other departments and our external partners. Education helps to deepen that awareness into building knowledge and skills that can then be, through engagement, put into action to preserve, protect, appreciate our natural resources and the systems that make those resources possible for our health, wellness, enjoyment, and the healthy function of our natural environment. So again, in terms of awareness of the city's Natural Resources Division, we are very lucky to have a robust division that is much larger than most cities have. We have 9 full-time natural resources staff experts, and at any given time of the year also have seasonal staff, Green Corps members, and others who are helping us to increase our capacity and achieve our goals in all of these priority areas of work. Building community resilience through water quality, tree diversity, soil health, management of invasive species to make room for diverse habitat, and then of course incorporating diversity, equity, and inclusion into the heart of all of that. And we work with a variety of audiences, starting with residents who we know value the green natural character of our city, the beautiful tree canopy, but might not know how important it is to take some action to help us in city parks to do that work, and also to be our partners by taking action on their own private property, where a large proportion of our natural areas are found in Minnetonka. And we know a lot of people visit to recreate here. Folks come into town to work. They own businesses here. They work here in the organization of the City of Minnetonka. And we also want to expand our reach through partner organizations, through education systems, and with underrepresented populations. So I mentioned partners. I just want to send out some gratitude to the whole city of Minnetonka. We work with different departments on different projects pretty much constantly. Our local watershed districts, state and county agencies, nonprofits, Ridgedale Library, Minnetonka Public Schools, local clubs and businesses, and a wide variety of volunteer groups. Really, the list is too long to include here, but gratitude to all of them. And the strategies that we use sort of repeatedly are print and electronic education and outreach materials, so memo articles. We have a newish blog called Ripple Effect that you can find on our website. We have a monthly natural resources e-newsletter. We do billboards and infographics and interpretive signage, sort of experiential outreach. And then have every year a long list of presentations, workshops, and what I like to call walk shops, which is where we gather to learn something and then go out and experience that in the outdoors, and a growing list of online learning modules. And then we provide engagement through a lot of volunteerism. I'll get into that in a moment here. And then providing a different selection every year of activities folks can do on their own time or with us. So it's all about informing and empowering our community, the whole community, to enjoy and protect our natural resources wherever they are. And what that looks like is really encompassed in three arms that are at the heart of what we do. So the first of those is volunteerism. So those support the city's goals for restoration and other efforts on public property, but at the same time they are crucially important for connecting people to nature. They build that sense of ownership that folks have in our parks and natural spaces. And they help neighbors to get together and work together toward shared goals. So in 2024, lots of different kinds of volunteerism, but I wanted to call out our emphasis on intergenerational events. So for example, we brought together the Bird Club, which is mostly seniors, with the Minnetonka Natural Resources Club from the high school. And they worked on the bird garden out here in the community center courtyard. We had elementary school students who came in summer of service and worked with our staff to to mulch and take care of the food forest over at Kelly Park, and so on. It's the quickie view of the program. 468 participants volunteered last year from 60 cities. That includes Minnesota and 10 other states. And that breadth is partly through word of mouth and active efforts to bring folks in by volunteer groups, like Friends of Minnetonka Parks, Minnesota Off-Road Cyclists, geocachers, and others bring their members in or bring in new members to volunteer events here in Minnetonka Parks. And we also have a lot of business and corporate volunteerism that leads to those sort of work days that bring in a lot of people from other communities to get to know our spaces and make an impact in a day. 4,675 service hours. All of this is about a 17% increase over 2023, but I want to emphasize that I don't necessarily expect that we have to grow the volunteer program that much every year. What I really think about is growing it in new directions, bringing in people who aren't currently aware of the benefits of volunteering in Minnetonka Parks, or that might not feel like they have a place, might not know how, and so we'll continue to work on that effort. So then that next arm of the work we do is pollinator awareness. This is woven into many layers of our work. If you can imagine, the heart of our work is habitat restoration, that pollinators are at the heart of every food web. So we put in the plants. If you build it, they will come. We get pollinators that feed songbirds and wildlife, and that system goes on and on. And we, in 2017, started doing that through the National Wildlife Federation's Mayor's Monarch Pledge. We were looking for a strategic, a structure to drive that work. And the Mayor's Monarch Pledge has 29 action steps we take action on, from awareness and volunteerism and strategic planning and selling native plants to residents, and the list goes on and on. And we have 4 years since 2017 been able to achieve actions on all of those 29 steps, which puts us at the champion level of that program, which really only matters because it means that it's become deeply integrated into our work. And we're proud of that. The third arm of engagement is community resilience, and that is mostly done through our Resilient Minnetonka program, which I hope you have heard of, but we're building awareness of it. This is really our education, technical assistance, and incentive program, because we heard from residents that they care about taking action on private property to do the same kinds of things that we're doing in park restoration, but they had faced a lot of barriers, from simply knowing what plants to put in, from knowing how to take care of them, from paying for the cost of that. It varies from person to person. But Resilient Minnetonka can help to address that. And so we have, at the sort of simplest level of that, a native plant sale with discount on many different kinds of plants and seed mixes that folks can get a discount on. We've increased that discount this year from $35 to $50 off the cost, and the materials shipped right to the residents. We had 96 participants in that last year. Additionally, there were 102 households that applied to Resilient Minnetonka to get some kind of technical assistance. So they got a site consultation. Some of them went on to get help with building a design to implement some goals. And they maybe had free buckthorn pickup, because a lot of folks are working on buckthorn control. And so we are adding to that program this year, one, by increasing, like I said, the native plant sale discount, increasing the rebate amounts, and providing a new rebate related to the cost of installation. So helping, like a couple of our watershed districts do, helping folks achieve that. 2025 goals, these are just broad, not specifics. You can take a look at the Natural Resources events page for a listing of volunteer events, workshops, other experiential forms of engagement throughout the year. But in general, want to build a new online learning module that helps participants in Resilient Minnetonka better understand that program and walk through it and take advantage of everything that they might be able to use from that. I want to keep partnering both internally and externally in the organization, because those relationships help us to build engagement. And I'm going to share the expertise that our team has with other communities that are maybe just getting started or haven't even begun to do the kind of natural resources protection and public engagement that we are fortunate to do. And that's what I have, so I appreciate your time, and I'm happy to address any questions.
Well, thank you, Christine, for the presentation. And as you said at the beginning, we're very fortunate to have a dedicated, positioned team to do this. And the city does a survey every year in terms of how the residents feel about the city. And it's, if anyone hasn't looked at that, it's available online. But the residents do place a high value on the natural resources and trees, and place a very high value on the quality of the natural resources and parks and trails maintenance and stuff. So I want to applaud you all for that efforts. And if questions or discussion? Ann?
I second everything Dave said. I personally use the discount on plants, so we appreciate that. I tried to look online to understand what are the rules or how you qualify for Resilient Minnetonka, and because it's not open yet, nothing was there. Can you summarize for us what's required?
Yes, thank you for the question. So we do not have criteria at this point in terms of an application based on any kind of need, because I think there is need, I'm sure, and we hope that we can get the word out to people who have, for example, the financial need. But some folks who have the finances don't have the time, the knowledge, maybe the physical capacity. So we're really kind of looking broadly to serve as many people as we can in the way that they need. And so it's essentially just apply. The application period begins on April 1st. All of our major programs, including the native plant sale, the tree and shrub sale, which is run by forestry, begin on April 1st. So that application link will be there, but also that orientation. It's kind of an online story map that will walk folks through to see in advance what's even possible. And also it is a one-on-one situation where when someone applies, I respond to them directly based on the application they filled out. They tell me what do they consider their barriers, what are their concerns, what are their goals, just as a beginning point. And then it becomes a conversation that I can have with them. And I try to point them specifically to the resources they need. If they're tackling buckthorn, I want to make sure they have access to knowledge about our workshop, our online learning module, the pickup, the need to time it right, the need to replace when they've cut, and all that variety. So just one example. So I hope that addresses your question.
Thank you. Yep.
Thank you.
Caleb?
Yeah, I had a question about how are you going about kind of tracking progress on these different initiatives? You presented to us kind of the past year of all your different metrics. And so I'm curious how you're monitoring changes over time and with the interventions that you're proposing.
It's an excellent question. Thank you. So I keep the same metrics every year. So the basic data that you saw on the volunteer program, for example, those are elements that we track every year. For volunteerism, we use an online volunteer tracking system that allows me to see where, or any of us, to see where volunteerism is happening, when it's happening, who's doing it, and so forth. So I'm able to pull any number of reports that I need. We do periodic program evaluation. So I might send out a survey to volunteers or to Resilient Minnetonka participants, and then I get feedback on that and try to respond by adjusting our programs based on the feedback, the direct feedback that I'm getting from participants. So I don't think we are deeply metric driven, but looking for trends is sort of how I would describe that, and making sure we are responsive to what we're being told or what we're seeing in the community. And certainly from the volunteerism standpoint, that is, people want more opportunities, different ways of volunteering, and some flexibility around that. They want to be part of different levels of a volunteer effort. So for example, we do a lot of buckthorn removal and garlic mustard pulling, but people also want to be able to be involved in the next phase of that, which is to replant and to be able to come back and maintain sites. And so that kind of feedback can help us build in opportunities and redirect our funding. For Resilient Minnetonka, the funding was increased and redirected portions of it to installation assistance because we heard that people were struggling to install what the designs that they had received.
Go ahead.
Just to continue the discussion here, I'm wondering on the Resilient Minnetonka portion, if you, as you mentioned, there's a different elevated funding, and if based on what you presented in terms of residents who've engaged with that program, do you feel that that the previous funding level was being met, or you basically ran out of funds for that program, or that this additional bump was critical to kind of meet the needs, or in effect, in the last year, were you turning people away from the Minnetonka Resilience because of lack of funding, or other type of resources, maybe even kind of sweat equity resources to do the work?
Right. We have not been turning people away because of lack of funding. The funding hasn't typically been fully used. And part of this is, last year was the first year I would consider this not to be a pilot program anymore. It was embedded enough and solid enough. They're just calling it one of our ongoing programs. But, for example, rebate funding. I set aside funding for a site consultation through our consultant for up to 50 folks. And of those, I wanted to be able to provide rebate funding for each one, if possible. But I only got 4 applications for those rebates. And I think the answer to that, and the message that I get in the program evaluation survey, is people don't want to have to fill out a lot of paperwork for a small rebate. So one goal we can have is simplifying our, what I'm now calling kind of a plant material rebate. It's just you're doing a small project and you just want to spend a little more. Plants can be costly, so you want a simple form to fill out rather than having a lot of detail on that. And we will focus detail on installation. But that's the other thing, is that people who went from a site consultation to a design, got great designs, but then found out how much it costs to implement that design. And so some people had to put on the brakes right there. This is going to cost me $6,000. That's not in my budget right now. How am I going to proceed? So we wanted them to be able to proceed with some assistance on that. And that has been met positively, because I reached out to everyone who had a design last year and offered them the ability to participate in the installation portion, and several of them are interested in that. So the need is there, and we can help people get over that particular hump. So I think we are continuing to just respond and adapt as we get more participation. And I would love to see more participation even than we've currently had, with about 200 people right now. But serving those people really well, again, would be a real priority over quality over quantity, possibly. Thank you.
And are there mechanisms through the Minnetonka Resilience to help not just, let's say, a single homeowner, but if there's folks like myself or others, maybe even on the park board, who kind of share with multiple neighbors a natural space that's even designated as such. And so to get anything meaningful done, you would need to collectively work. And is there anything within that Resilience Minnetonka that allows for folks in those situations to have additional or additive assistance, inclusive of kind of networking, perhaps the group who group who live around a shared natural space, who may not have a social connection, except this natural space, to kind of do this good work?
Yes. Short answer, yes. So this year we are incorporating additional funding for multifamily properties, which would be associations. I think we'll have to do it's probably a little more challenging to do apartment connecting with property managers, but certainly we'll look into that and try to do some direct outreach to see if there's any interest that we can build on from those kinds of properties. But I'm already working this year with an HOA, a fairly large HOA that's got some great plans. The thing that comes into this is when you look at a bigger project, we don't have that kind of funding. But what I can do is I work with them to find additional funding. For example, Hennepin County has a large Good Steward grant, and this HOA was able last year to apply for that. So that was their starting point. After a site consultation, they applied for that Hennepin County grant, got some substantial funding from that, and then we're able to just sort of layer onto that and to add to their opportunities and enable them to do a buckthorn project and a pond restoration project rather than one or the other. And so I think it will be like that on a case-by-case basis, figuring out how we can help and where there are additional sources of help to point people toward. In some cases, that will be the watershed districts. So Minnetonka has 4 overlying watershed districts, and 2 of those in the southern half of the city actually have their own programs very similar to Resilient Minnetonka. So if I get an application or talk on the phone with someone, which I do a lot, who's interested in some of these actions, if they're in one of those 2 watershed districts, I actually just point them directly to those. And then our funding, a lot of it for technical assistance, can be spent in the 2 watershed districts that don't have those programs. So there are ways to try to address that and increase the impact and hit those more unusual non-single family dwelling sites where there's potential for impact. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah, Corey?
Not really a question, but I just wanted to say that
I think Christine does an amazing job. I've worked with her through the farmers market, and I think this engagement plan is extremely robust and comprehensive. I've seen other types of outreach plans that are not as, there's so much that you have going on here, and I find it amazing that you can kind of take all those balls and like keep them up in the air because it's a lot. I'm curious to know how you plan to increase volunteerism in the youth, because obviously there are tons of adults in Minnetonka who love natural resources and are trying to protect it. I'm curious how you're going to foster that enthusiasm and excitement in teens. I have a 16-year-old boy who loves nature, but I'm struggling to get him to get involved. He goes to the high school, and of course he could be involved in the club, but he's not really, he's a loner. So is there a way that you can sort of talk about how maybe you're going to work towards bringing in the young kids?
Yes, thank you. I really appreciate that. That means a lot coming from a colleague. And I have worked, as you mentioned, the club. It's the Natural Resources Club at Minnetonka High School that was actually started by a couple of young folks a few years ago, and we've had some great opportunities to work on service learning with the elementary schools and some habitat restoration efforts and whatnot. One restriction we face with the bulk of the volunteerism we do through natural resources is that it's invasive species control work. So cutting buckthorn, applying herbicide, hauling buckthorn, things that we don't necessarily want youth to be doing, but we have managed that sometimes by having having a division of labor. So for example, if, I would say 16 and up probably, younger folks want to come and learn about that and participate in it, they can, and the staff or steward who are leading that would have assigned them to certain tasks that are like not using herbicide, not using a saw, for example. But I also really want to build in community science. And so this is something I have been thinking about and want an opportunity for young people. I was the young person who I just did things on my own. I'm still kind of that person. And so going on to a big meeting might not be the thing for everyone. But community science is something you can do in a group or on your own, and keeping our pollinator focus in mind and the monarch emphasis of that, there is a real opportunity to monitor monarchs. So I actually worked with one student last summer to sort of try out some training and then going out into the field. We went and looked for monarch eggs and caterpillars and did some counts. And I think we can build on that. And I also think just getting kids out and about to teach them some stuff, naturalist type stuff, to understand why this is valuable would be a priority for me. And it's mostly about making the connections. So I would be delighted to hear from any young people who are interested in that kind of thing and work with them. I maybe can't come up with 20 different ways of engaging 20 different kids or groups, but starting small and seeing where it goes. And certainly I'd like to connect with Hopkins High School as well. So yes to all of that, and hopefully more to come as time goes on. Have him reach out to me if he's interested. Thank you.
If I could just piggyback on that, because that was actually one of my questions too about engaging youth. I think it's great. This has been a wonderful presentation. I really am so impressed with what you've done and what the team has done. Just a couple of ideas in the follow-up is, can you piggyback off of the National Night Out? Because we have a lot of kids in our neighborhood who show up for that. And yeah, they love to see the police cars and the fire trucks and ring the bell, but maybe they could also learn a little about somebody from Natural Resources about how to get engaged. I don't know if that's an opportunity, but there's so many kids who show up for that, so that's where the youth are. The old line, why do they rob banks? That's where the money is. You go where the kids are. The second thing is, I used to live in Bloomington many years ago, and we did twice-a-year cleanups in our neighborhood. And we gave every kid a small garbage bag, and we told them this is the area that we're cleaning up, especially in the winter, after the winter, and it's so grubby and grimy and garbage everywhere. And we had a little contest and made it competitive, and whoever got the most, we gave them gift cards to Dairy Queen. And we got a great Dairy Queen here. I'm sure they would like to sponsor something like that. And you make it fun and you make it a group activity, and the result is they're out in nature helping. So it's a couple ideas.
And ideas are so welcome. I had not really thought about youth at National Night Out, and Public Works tends to have the big trucks, and Natural Resources, we probably need to let the organizers of that event know that Natural Resources is available to address interests for anyone, youth or otherwise. I should mention that I usually have a booth at Spooktacular, if you're familiar with that event, and that's a way that we excite kids and families, hundreds of them, about some nature-connected concept, and I always really enjoy that. And I think that there are many other ways to do this, and trash cleanups have typically not been a part of what we do, but I think the watershed districts sometimes do that along the creek corridors, and I think that there are variations on that we certainly could pursue. So I appreciate those suggestions. Thank you very much.
Any other questions or comments? Well, great. I want to thank you, Christine. I thought the report was great. This is going to spend time studying this. This is terrific as well. And again, really appreciate the efforts of you and the whole department. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So now on to number 8, reports from staff, information items.
Yes, thank you, Chair Ingraham and Park Board members. Before we get into the items in your packet, I just want to publicly thank our new Park Board members for joining the Park Board and want to welcome you. We thank you for your service. This is a very high-paying job, as you know. And so we really appreciate you being here. Obviously, this is an important part of helping our community be better, and so thank you for your service. With that, I also want to point out, typically, we do have a position for a student representative. We don't have one right now, but we are soliciting that position, so I want to throw it out to you guys as well as anyone watching. If you go to the city website and go to the Park Board webpage, there's a link for submitting your interest. So if you do know of anybody, if you can have ways to get the word out, this would be somebody under 25 is sort of the criteria. And they could submit a letter of interest and be considered for that position. So we'd love to have a student representative. Again, we haven't had one for a little while, so it can be kind of challenging to find, but if you have any good connections, definitely work those and see if we can find somebody of interest. Okay, so getting into the information items, the first one is actually I'll talk about. For the current members, if you recall, at the tour last year that we took, we went to Ford Park, where we've been doing quite a bit of restoration work. You actually also saw the habitat restoration and maintenance plan that got approved by the Park Board, I think earlier last year. We're continuing to do some work there, and actually we were contacted by Tree Trust, and they are currently working, excuse me, with Lake Winds Co-op, which is a local co-op. It's their 50th anniversary, and they were interested in planting trees. And so they are going to be doing a pretty large tree planting in Ford Park, sort of near the kind of the eastern end of the park, near the highway. There's a brome field, if you recall seeing that. And that'll be coming up on May 1st, and so we're really excited to have Tree Trust and Lake Winds participating in that event. I'll turn it over to Matt.
Thank you very much, Chair Ingraham, Park Board. I have three information items for you tonight. The first one is we are going to be hosting the third community work group meeting for our off-leash dogs. This will be, we hosted a meeting on February 19th. That was the second of 3 meetings. The group is comprised of residents in the city, two Park Board members, Member Hanley and Member Ingraham, Chair Ingraham, including staff. Leslie and myself are part of that work group, as also including Community Safety Officer, Captain Meehan. We are going to be hosting our next meeting 2 Wednesdays from now. That's March 19th. The goal of that meeting is to settle on site characteristics of off-leash dog areas and site criteria that we would be applying to parks throughout the city. This is sort of an evolution of the process we've been going through, where we've sort of identified what would make a good off-leash area in the city and talking through those as a community work group. That March 19th will be the last of 3 meetings as of now, with the intention of bringing a recommendation from the work group to the City Council in May at this point. In the info item, I also have reference to our Minnetonka Matters page, which outlines the timeline that led up to this process, the background information, as well as in the info items, I've linked to 2 reference documents, I think as Park Board. These are strong ones to get familiar with, namely the POST plan, our Parks, Open Space, and Trails plan, as well as the Natural Resources Master Plan, which are important sort of background information related to our park system in general. So good hot links there. Any questions related to that info item? Ann?
I'm looking forward to the next meeting. When will we get some maps?
Yeah, so we are working with a consultant on sort of the scheduling of the agenda for this next meeting. They have been working on sort of follow-up after each meeting. The plan was this week certainly to deliver to the community work group sort of homework to get us ready to apply these site characteristics to actual land in the city of Minnetonka, including some maps. Purgatory is certainly top of that list, as the whole process sort of came out of the Purgatory master planning process. But otherwise, we'll be addressing a variety of parks and allowing people to sort of rank them and apply some of these characteristics in advance, but then certainly a lot of the heavy lifting will be happening at the meeting.
Right.
But there's lots of land to consider and only 2 hours during
Yes.
the meeting. And
Yeah. Yep.
so I
Clock's
look
ticking.
forward. I will check my email daily.
For those of us who don't know, can you give us a sort of a summary of the profile of the people on this? Are you on that committee, that working
Dave and
committee?
I are.
Dave and you are?
Yep.
Okay,
And then
and how many
there's-
other people?
So there are 2 folks from the Friends of Minnetonka Parks. There are 2 folks from PAWS, which is a community group. They recently hosted dog trash style events in Purgatory. So there's 2 folks from each one of those organizations. There are 5 what I would call free agents. We put up an application on the Minnetonka Matters project site, and we fielded 30-something applications. The city council then reviewed those applications and made a recommendation and appointed those 5 members to the work group. Leslie and I are part of that group, Captain Meehan. Anybody else I'm forgetting? So, yeah, a wide range of residents with a variety of interests.
Yeah, I was wondering about utilization of kind of ordinance crafting best practices. So it's very uncommon that any city would need to kind of reinvent or invent from scratch some sort of ordinance. And so I'm curious if up to this point the process has included any kind of sample ordinance language that's been recommended by any interest group to help inform what we're trying to help the city leadership accomplish. And then in particular, the enforcement, because as a new member, my initial concern is rampant scofflaws as it relates to these types of ordinances.
Yes, thank you for your question. That's certainly an important consideration. So a little bit of a background. In advance of the community work group, the City Council did adopt changes to 2 ordinances, one related to citywide off-leash dogs, and one related in particular to dogs off-leash in park areas. And there were 2 language considerations in those ordinance changes, and part of those presentations to the City Council, we did go through all our neighboring communities, our comparable cities, and looked at their ordinance language and made sure that we provided the City Council with all that sort of background that would help them, make an appropriate decision based on Minnetonka. We do like to consider ourselves unique, but certainly it's useful to reference what other communities have been doing. So that certainly help them make the decision leading up to that. And we are working closely with community safety and police regarding enforcement. They've been part of that dialogue throughout. The Captain Meehan, I mentioned a few times, has presented to the City Council. The rubber needs to hit the road when these ordinance changes. What are we going to be able to do to actively enforce? So we're working very closely with community safety to make sure that any changes would be enforceable in the park system.
And just to a little bit more background, this small group, the citizens group, our charter is to pick a place to have an off-leash dog. Oh, sorry, because I'm on, okay. Have an off-leash dog area. The ordinance, as Matt explained, had already been crafted. So we're just picking a spot or spots.
There was a November city council meeting where they adopted the ordinance changes. There's a big conversation among city leadership and a presentation from myself and others. It's worth checking out, I would
So
say.
you could watch it.
I'll step in here too.
That was my favorite comment.
Historical ordinance the city had in place for dogs, or animals, I should say, dogs, allowed for dogs to be off leash as long as they're under voice control anywhere in the city. So in parks, neighborhoods, anywhere in the city, if your dog was under voice control, it could be off leash, which made it very difficult for enforcement around that because, you know, if your dog, and it's specified, you know, how many commands you had to give and how quickly they'd respond, and basically was an unworkable ordinance and unenforceable in the times when public safety did invoke citation, and the judges always threw it out because of the ambiguity in our ordinance. So the city finally took a positive step in November and redid the ordinance. And what that now means is effective as of, I think, January, but certainly now, all dogs in Minnetonka have to be on a leash unless it's in your own yard or a friend's yard that's allowing you to have your dog safe play there. And on May 19th, no dogs can be off leash in any of our parks unless it's a designated off leash area. I think that's the correct way to put it. So this is a critical timeline because that's the way the ordinance is written. So you can't kind of punt and go, oh, you know, now we need to go to June because technically you'd have to redo the ordinance. And so our April meeting we've added to our agenda, or our schedule is really critical to review this. Work from the working group before it goes to City Council. The City Council formed the working group or initiated the working group in the November meeting, and that working group started meeting in January. So I would encourage all of the members, but particularly you three new members, to review the links that are here, as well as, and maybe Matt or Leslie, you could send out to everyone the master plan, Purgatory master plan link, because I think that's a critical piece. Our most heavily used off-leash area is Purgatory, and it's the area where there's probably been the most concern around public safety, or if you go through the survey results, and I use the park a lot, but I've been on both sides of the issue, and the survey work has shown that there's a lot of people who will not go to Purgatory anymore because of off-leash dogs, and we really don't want to have a park where people don't feel safe or don't want to go. And so the question is, can we make Purgatory better, designate the off-leash area? So the next meeting is critical, and as Ann has indicated, I mean, a lot has to happen pretty quickly to have it happen. So, but I would really strongly suggest you review the post plan and the natural resources plan, and then if they'll send out the link to the Purgatory master plan, I think that'd be great.
The Purgatory master plan was pretty clear on where we were going to designate off-leash dog areas and things we were going to do to protect it more than today. Maybe not perfect, but we had like a plan A. Are you considering making changes to that as well?
Yes. So
That's in scope to change
Yes.
what we put in that document.
part
for
of the
Plan A?
to-dos of the master plan was form this community work group to reconsider all the attributes of a designated off-leash area, including the ones that were highlighted in that Purgatory master plan.
Okay. So it's okay. Got it.
And that master plan had like Plan A, Plan B, and Plan C.
Depending on if
Who was
A
ye-
worked.
Depending on
or
who
not.
was yelling.
To
So
make a recommendation.
then there will be, the group does its work in 2 weeks, and then we come back and we hear about it, and we get to have an opinion, which no doubt you will listen to, and then it goes to the city council, right? Okay,
Correct.
My understanding is we're actually submitting a recommendation from the park board. So it won't be commenting, we'd have to be fair. So we're like on the leash law, we commented, but didn't say we recommend because that was the way it was sort of set up for us. This time, I think is where we will actually be recommending a plan.
Maybe it's a
So-
work group recommendation and park board, hopefully aligned.
Yeah,
That
or
would
I
be
think my takeaway is if the
meaningful.
work group comes back with this, whatever this is, and the park board could say, we approve that with this change. And then that would go, and ultimately it's up to the city council. And I think, personally, I think, and the mayor said this in the November meeting, is what we really have to have is at least one designated area by May 19th. So I think there's a, probability that we'll hopefully come to terms with a designated area, most likely I think in Purgatory, and then potentially go, and we believe there's opportunities in other parks as well, but it's not as fully developed. And we don't really want to make a recommendation on how that works, other than to say that there's a potential for, that maybe the working group is then enabled to continue to work on that, or some other group that comes back to the park board.
I like that approach. It can be in phases. You don't have to
Yeah, I
have it
think-
all
yeah.
figured out.
Yeah. See, if you look at
Day
how long
one.
it took for the Purgatory Master Plan, how
Test
many
it.
iterations, it's kind of hard to think we work them all out in one meeting, so.
Are you including best management practices from other dog parks? 'Cause we have a lot of cutting-edge park and recreation areas, Plymouth being one of them,
Yeah.
with some of
We
those
haven't seen that
examples?
yet in the working group,
Okay.
but the hope is that, yeah, there'll be best practice presented to the working group.
Thank you.
One of the things that we heard from the public was that some sort of fencing would be, or way of keeping the dogs in the dog area. So I heard a rumor that at the city council meeting, the city manager said there's no money for fencing. I would like to clarify whether there is some money for some kind of fencing.
Yes, thank you for your question. We have park improvement funds. So we are able to, as necessary, we have monies needed in our park system yearly that don't need to be pre-budgeted. So we do have funds available for park improvements. Bigger expenses need to be accomplished through the capital improvement plan and have to be budgeted for a year in advance at least.
We did not include it in the last capital plan.
We do not have any off-leash dog fencing included in this capital improvement plan at this point.
But we could do some inexpensive temporary fencing out of petty cash.
We are fortunate in the city of Minnetonka. We have a robust park system with a lot of amenities.
So I'm just going to raise this question. I don't really know how to frame it or if it's really even helpful, but in the process of thinking about a specific space for animals to be off leash, is there any increased liability concerns with how that's constructed for the city? Let's say either for the animals, the injury or anything of animals to one another, or the intervention attempts by owners. So if so, how do we? Has that been addressed? And if not, is there something that that can be done in this work group or by us as we make a recommendation in next month to mitigate some of that?
Yeah, I would have to defer on that question, frankly. I know, for instance, at our skateboarding park, there's a sign and that we are generally insured by the Minnesota cities.
League of Minnesota Cities.
League of Minnesota Cities. So perhaps that's applicable in this situation. But we haven't discussed liability or how designated areas would be affecting liability concerns.
Yeah, it's something that, perhaps we'd have to have our city attorney weigh in. I don't know that it would be any different than any other amenity in a park, if it's a skate park or a playground. Tennis courts. And Kelly, you might know more, but typically we have insurance through League of Minnesota Cities that covers us for things like that.
Correct. We would confer with our legal staff, but recreational immunity applies to most areas and likely would be that as well. So, like the last time we addressed it was with our mountain biking, and so we made sure we connected with the League of Minnesota Cities and they agreed. So we would connect with legal staff to confirm.
Caleb's got an interesting point, though, I think, is it'd be worth checking off on that because obviously for years we've had off-leash dogs. But if the city now has a officially designated off-leash dog area, because I think Purgatory, while it's kind of been that way, it's never been officially an off-leash dog area. Does that change our liability? I think it's a good question.
We can certainly look into that with the city attorney.
There, in some of the other cities, you have to apply to use the area, and part of that application is a waiver, which may or may not protect the city a lot, but at least we have something written.
I can't recall if Brian, you maybe aren't close enough or recent enough.
It's been a while, yeah.
But I gotta believe for Three Rivers off-leash area, Brian, somewhere on that sign you walk under right by, there's gotta be fine print about, reliability. Like if you've been skiing, the back of your pass, there's a lot of fine print too. So that's a good question.
That's a good point. It's been over 20 years since I was at Three Rivers, but there were dog permits issued in the waiver, and again, that's where you would get the legal advice about, does that prohibit, we have an attorney down, and one of our members, prevent somebody from filing one or not. But
It's worthwhile to have. It doesn't provide a lot of protection, to be honest. It's the insurance that you really want the coverage. That's where you're going to find your protection. So, and the liability issues when you go into a dog park, that's different than an off-leash area. People are going to be coming and going. They're not going to be gated, and I don't think they're going to be gated to have a permit to go into an off-leash area. You're just going to go. As opposed to getting a permit, like, say, to go to a dog park. That's a different process. I don't think of a dog park as the same as an off-leash area, in the sense that a dog park in many instances is very, very calibrated and fenced in, and sometimes you have to have a permit for large dogs and small dogs. I don't know if that's what's being considered here, because when I go to Purgatory, people their dogs are running. Doesn't matter size, and it's just in an open space.
And it will be different. And we expect it to be different going forward.
Good luck with that.
Other questions, comments from Matt on the small topic of off-leash dogs? Great.
Thank you very much. Moving on to my second info item of the night, Cullen Nature Preserve master planning. So we are currently undergoing master planning at Cullen Nature Preserve. It's got a wonderful name, but it is not open to the public as of yet. But it's a parcel west of Meadow Park. It's a beautiful rolling topography, actively being restored site that we are actively master planning with Bar Engineering. So we are in the process of developing a draft master plan that will be presented to the public for comment in the next several weeks here. We are working with the Friends of Cullen Nature Preserve, and they're providing us feedback on an initial draft of that master plan. So that'll go out to the public for comment, and then will be presented to you folks on this board in a next meeting here coming up relatively soon. But it is currently not open to the public quite yet. But the master plan will involve general park access, trails, benches, overlooks, interpretation of the restoration on site, features such as that. Questions?
We went to see that 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
Cullen Nature Preserve?
Yeah.
So we've owned the parcel for some time. It's under conservation easement with the Minnesota Land Trust, but we've started to restore it. That's sort of this two-pronged process we have where we do restoration planning, and then we do the human side of things, the trails and the access, and now we're in that kind of human side of the planning here. So it's a really exciting whole cloth new park in the city.
How large is it?
It's 30 acres, but about half of that is wetland, so, but it's really beautiful rolling topography. It was very heavily buckthorn infested, but it's quite open now. Prairie, oak savanna being restored, new seed mixes have gone in. It's really quite spectacular.
Where is it again?
It's west of Meadow, so it's just north of, you go up Oakland, and it's on the west side of Oakland, a half a mile north of the Meadow parking lot.
You can see,
Nice.
you can see parts of it from 494.
Yes, you can.
You look into it from 494. Actually, your best view into it is from 494.
Don't say that.
Great. Wonderful.
The city owns the underlying fee ownership?
Yes, the city owns it, but it's under conservation easement with the Minnesota Land Trust. So that basically states that we're not allowed to develop it or sell it off, that it needs to be available for ecological experience, essentially.
And it's very unique for our, I think all of our spaces, I'll use the word spaces, because it does have very clear covenants around how it can be used. It's a really spectacular spot.
Yes.
Correct. So,
And so there'll be time between now and our meeting in April for the public to comment and still get right back to us, up to us? Okay,
yes.
great.
Yep. And there's a Minnetonka Matters page associated with that, so we'll be issuing updates relatively soon here and receiving feedback from the public. Final info item from me. So we are going to be hosting open houses related to the existing tennis courts at Covington and Oberlin Park. A correction on this info item. These open houses are not going to take place on March 12th. We've rescheduled them to March 20th to provide adequate notification to the residents around these two parks. What happens is pickleball is a very popular sport these days. So whenever an existing tennis court is going to be resurfaced and restriped for maintenance reasons, we host these open houses and collect information from the local residents regarding their interest of restriping or adding new nets to accommodate pickleball. We offer a variety of options, essentially a hybrid tennis court pickleball option, and we open it up for folks to let us know if they have any concerns or if they're generally supportive of pickleball at these particular sites. So we'll be hosting those two open houses on March 20th, 5:30 at the Public Works office, and the local residents around those parks will receive notification, and we'll report back on what we hear at a future meeting.
Okay, and then I have the last item. So I know you, for those who are currently on here, we've talked about the Community Forest Management Plan for a while now. Unfortunately, we have had some staff changes at the city. Our city forester actually left and took a position with another organization this past January. So we are currently in the process of filling that position. Because of that change, and because this plan really helps guide the work of the forestry group in our division, we're putting it on hold until we actually fill that position, so that person can be really integrated that's not a word, integrated into the plan, the planning effort. So our goal is for that plan, a draft plan, to come to the park board in 2025, summer of 2025.
Well, with Hannibal being gone, is the emerald ash borer work still progressing and all the things
Absolutely.
that were...
Absolutely. We have, we're fortunate, we have an assistant city forester at the city, we have a forestry technician, and we have several tree inspectors. We have an AmeriCorps member who's dedicated to forestry. So we are absolutely continuing with the work on removing and replacing ash trees throughout the city. We still have the relief grant through the Department of Natural Resources that supports ash removal on private property for people who meet the eligibility requirements, and that's all continuing. So there really isn't much of a change at all in what we're doing on our day-to-day operations.
Okay.
All right. With that, I can talk about the upcoming meeting schedule. I can bring it up here. So as kind of alluded to, we are having a meeting on April 14th. No, not 14th, 23rd, I need glasses, where it's kind of a special session. It's a pretty full agenda. It will be the off-leash dog work group recommendation that will come before the park board. The goal is for the park board to generate a recommendation that will then move on to the city council. So we hope we can get there. We also have a number of habitat restoration and maintenance plans coming to the park board. Our goal is to have plans for Big Willow Park, Jadana Park, and Green Circle Park. And as you recall, we're starting to plan these parks for restoration purposes, and we're sort of working down our list. And so these are 3 parks that we'll be focusing on this year. And then the draft Cullen Nature Preserve Master Plan that Matt just talked about will also be coming to the park board as well for review. So yes.
So, as you mentioned, that agenda is really packed. I would expect we'd have some good resident engagement in the first topic. And I worry that topic 2 and 3 always comes with very passionate people, and that our engagement might not be what it usually is if the meeting goes on for hours and hours. Is there anything that can move to June? That CIP meeting usually is pretty quick because you guys do such a great job of giving us the pre-read and having it all put together. If there's anything that could shift, we might appreciate it.
Or have both meetings?
So we certainly could take the habitat restoration plans and move them to June. That's pretty easy. We like to have those plans adopted before we start the work that's taking place. But frankly, a month is not going to make or break that deal. As far as the Cullen Nature Preserve plan, I have to look to you. Is there any specific deadline?
Not necessarily. That could come later. We could host the plan for public comment longer. There's really no pressing deadline at this point. We are going to be applying for some grant dollars, but that'll happen before this regardless. So
I'll let you guys decide,
Yeah.
but that's just
I think we can take
some
that
thoughts
definitely into
on-
consideration.
Yeah,
That's
making that
probably
meeting
good.
not too
Yeah.
too beefy.
Because we do anticipate there likely will be more members of the public than we typically have, we are planning on hosting that in the council chambers to accommodate the public.
On that point, because this has all been pretty compressed, in the past, like for the master plans, if I remember correctly, that's always been published in public early enough so people can review it before the meeting. Is the anticipation that that work group recommendation will be available publicly before the meeting?
It would certainly be a part of the packet that goes out, so that it'll become public record when that packet goes out. Are you referring to earlier than the packet?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think, for like the master plan, was it just when the packet went out, or did they get a more advanced warning?
Typically, we would just put it out with the packet. I guess one thing we could look at is there is a Minnetonka Matters webpage, and if that information is put up on the webpage and there's an update sent out,
Yep.
that would probably be the best way to handle that.
Okay, maybe we should talk about that after the March working group, because we don't want to have, people say they didn't have a chance to review the plan or review the recommendation from the working group. And I'm assuming this will be open for public, because if you remember at the end of the master plans, we actually had a session where it was not open and it went to the city council. So, but I'm assuming this time we're going to have it open again.
So do you mean open for public comment?
Open comment.
At the park board meeting?
Yeah, it's always open, but open for public comment.
I would have to check with our city manager
Yeah.
to see if the council's intent is that there is public comment being taken at the park board. Sometimes they would rather have the public comment happening at the council
Yeah.
meeting. So I'd have to check with the city manager on
Great,
that.
that would be great to know.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
both online and in person.
Yep.
What those expectations are.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, so we will definitely look at moving the restoration plans and the Cullen plan to the June meeting. Did you have a question?
I do. If it's possible, it would help me get stuff on my calendar correctly if we could if you know, could we have all of the dates for 2025 meetings?
Absolutely, yeah, we do have those already scheduled, the room scheduled, and so we
Okay.
certainly can.
Last year, I had put the first Wednesday of every month. And then
Absolutely.
they weren't always the first Wednesday.
Yes,
And so,
absolutely.
They're on your, here.
They are on the city calendar, I think is what she's pointing out too. So I'm happy to
Just the one on your
send,
iPad specifically.
happy to send information out too.
Okay,
That would be helpful.
I don't think of looking in here, so thank you very much.
I just looked.
So with that, we are canceling the May meeting because we're meeting just shortly before then. So that is considered canceled. And then the next meeting would be June 4th. And one of the topics, the business items will be the capital improvement plan. So that will be available for your review and comment. And then we will bring back those restoration plans and the Cullen master plan at that meeting as well.
And for the new people, maybe you know this already, but we don't meet the first Wednesday in July.
Correct. Typically, we would not meet in July. We would meet in August. September, we have been historically hosting a joint meeting with the city council and a tour. And then we would meet in October, November, and December as normal. Yes. And then I will turn it over to Kelly to talk about some of the special events that Recreation has coming.
Thank you, Leslie. So my portion of this is under Recreation. We host most of the special events and activities. So upcoming events on April 5th, Saturday, we have the Spring Extravaganza. That's a spring event for children ages 1 through 9. That's here at the Minnetonka Community Center. You do have to register for that event. I just looked. We have 125 spaces total and 94 registrations already. So there's only about 30 more spots open for the Spring Extravaganza. We've talked about the farmers market at a couple park board meetings. We are moving the farmers market to the marsh this year. That was something that we had previously discussed. So the market will be on Tuesdays from 2 to 6 starting on June 3rd. Music in the Park is also on Tuesdays. That's here at the Minnetonka Amphitheater. That starts on June 24th. And then Minnetonka's big city event is Summerfest. That always happens. Some people are confused that it's always the 4th Saturday in June. So sometimes if there's 5 Saturdays, people think it's the last one. It's the 4th. So that happens to fall on June 28th this year. So that's the upcoming events.
Thank you. That brings us to number 9, Park Board member reports. Any Park Board members have reports to make?
I can do a quick one. I volunteered to be a park board representative on a zoning work group, just so you guys are aware. We've had our first meeting and it's a delight. The quick summary is that city leadership and city council came up with a 2040 vision for the city. And in order to achieve some of that vision, some of the zoning ordinances need to be reviewed. So there's a work group. The objectives seem to be really focused on housing. So a lot of discussions about housing zoning and rules and whatnot. And there's a representative on the board from the Park Board, the Sustainability Commission, the DEI Commission. There's city planning folks in the group. Group of concerned citizens. Maybe it's like a 10-person working group. And it's an 18-month project. I'll give you more information as I know it, but I'm assuming my responsibility is to make sure that any changes are thoughtful and respective of parks' needs and maintaining our wonderful, excellent parks. So if you have any questions, let me know, but just wanted to let you know I'm doing that on the side.
No other reports? I guess that moves us to number 10. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Yes, all do aye.
Second.
Aye.
A lot of enthusiasm there, that's good. Thank you very much. And welcome.
Thank you.
Before you head out, if any, especially the new Park Board members, if you have questions.